It was over in 7 minutes. 7 minutes of screams, fire, and silence. The attack was meant to be a lesson, brutal and final. Instead, it became a legend whispered across the stars, the kind that makes warlords hesitate and empires rethink invasion plans. The Karuthak Dominion came to crush Earth's weakest colony. They left broken, scattered, and silent. KAVH-7 wasn't much to look at. A lonely orb tucked near the edge of the Tarhaz Drift, orbiting a red dwarf star with barely enough warmth to make its soil fertile. It had no planetary defense grid, no military garrison, not even a functioning satellite network. A few orbital relays blinked lazily, and the colony itself was a cluster of domes and subsurface bunkers, where humans toiled to terraform rock into soil and air thick enough to breathe. It wasn't even a military target, just convenient. The Karuthak chose it precisely because it looked soft. The Dominion scouts did a sweep. The report was a joke: no resistance, low technology infrastructure, population under 6,000. Mostly farmers, engineers, and atmospheric technicians. One scout commander wrote in his brief, "If Earth is sending this as a colony, they've given up." The attack fleet was modest. 4 cruisers, 12 dropships, and 2 atmospheric displacers. More than enough to scorch a helpless rock. The goal wasn't conquest, it was punishment. Earth had refused a trade treaty. Kavoka 7 was selected as the message. Let the galaxy see what happened to those who said no. As they approached, a transmission was received. It wasn't a distress call, or surrender, or plea. It was calm. A single voice, soft but composed. "Welcome to Kavoka 7. State your purpose and intent. Traffic control requests your approach vector." They didn't respond. Instead, the Karuthak commander, Grand Talak Varuan, activated the fleet's command relay and spoke one word: annihilate. The displacer ships descended into the atmosphere, their sonic engines creating shockwaves that rippled through the clouds. Firestorm launchers spun up, preparing to level the colony's coordinates. The first cruiser targeted the settlement's central dome and began to charge its main cannon. But something was strange. The colony's surface structures were still there, according to sensors, but visual contact was off. Slightly wrong. Shadows didn't fall where they should. Buildings seemed to shimmer subtly. The ground shimmered too, like heat haze, but it was winter on Kavoka, a dropship reported. Turbulence on final approach. Not normal atmospheric interference, something magnetic, something artificial. They dismissed it. There was no way the humans could generate that kind of field. Then a civilian transport shuttle, unarmed, unshielded, suddenly exploded midair before they could lock weapons. No warning. No weapon signature. Just burst into flame and vanished. From scanners, the wreckage never hit the ground. An accident, Varuan muttered. The humans are barely competent. But even the Karuthak crew shifted uncomfortably. None of their targeting systems were behaving normally. No enemy fire. No countermeasures, just static drift, interference. Their sensor arrays showed the colony was still sitting idle. No sign of defense activity, no military signals. But still, everything felt wrong. They deployed a recon vessel, small, fast, with sensor dampeners. It cut across the colony perimeter and vanished behind the foothills known on old Earth maps as the Old Rim. It never came back. No explosion. No emergency beacon. It just disappeared. The ship's transponder pinned once more, strangely faint, then went dark. Grand Talak demanded a ground incursion. The humans had no real military. Surely they hadn't developed stealth tech or signal scramblers. The data didn't match the image of the enemy they had in mind. But Varuan wasn't one to be swayed by shadows. He believed in fire and thunder. They began the landing sequence. 12 dropships, armored with force plating, loaded with elite Dominion shock troopers, twice the number needed for a planet of this size. The ships broke through the clouds. And then they saw it. The surface of Kavaka 7 was changing. Not structurally, optically. Camouflage fields deactivated in rippling waves, revealing angular ridges, automated turret nests, and tower structures that hadn't existed in their earlier scans. Roads uncoiled from beneath the soil. Entire buildings shifted upward from underground. Like awakening titans. What they had mistaken for agricultural domes were armored bunkers with retractable hatches. What they thought were wind turbines were railgun arrays, silently spinning up power. The Dominion fleet scrambled. Commanders screamed for orbital scans, trying to make sense of the impossible. There had been no heat signatures, no defense networks, no detectable power sources. Kavaka 7 had hidden everything. Not just concealed, it had lied to every sensor, every probe, every scan. It had cloaked an entire colony's war infrastructure under agricultural noise, masking even AI energy pulses. The Karuthak invasion force paused, momentarily stunned. Confusion turned to concern. Concern edged into fear. Something wasn't right. This wasn't just a colony. One of the junior officers on Varuan's bridge whispered what everyone else was thinking but didn't dare say aloud. "Sir, I think we've been baited." But by then, it was too late. They were already inside the snare, and the humans were waking up, asterisk above the cloud line. The Karuthak fleet circled like carrion birds, waiting for the kill. Below, Kavaka 7 remained still, ominously quiet. The invasion should have already begun in full, but now even seasoned Dominion tacticians hesitated. Nothing was behaving according to pattern. Invasion Commander Talak Varuan narrowed his eyes at the holoscreen, scanning the layout again. The agricultural sprawl had transformed. Defense structures emerged where none should exist. Worse sensor. Sweeps still registered nothing. No energy spikes, no thermal upticks, no biosignatures. Static echoes, masking arrays. Holograms, muttered his sensor tech. Impossible, Varuan snapped. This planet doesn't have the infrastructure. Then something here is lying, the tech replied, voice tight. Varuan gritted his fangs and turned back toward the planet. He didn't like being made a fool. And this entire situation reeked of something clever. Too clever for humans. He ordered the first wave of dropships down. 12 vessels descended in tight formation, scanning all directions for threats. Their hulls were thick, impervious to small arms or crude planetary defenses. They were the Dominion's pride, designed to survive atmospheric re-entry under heavy fire. The first ship touched down in Sector B, an open plain beside an algae processing facility. It vanished. No explosion. No beacon, just silence. On board the fleet, engineers panicked. The telemetry had flatlined mid-descent, right before touchdown. Within 10 seconds, the second and third dropships diverted course, then also blinked off the map, swallowed whole. By blank data. By the fifth ship, the panic became confusion. No heat trails, no shrapnel, no enemy fire. Where are the wrecks? Demanded Varuan. There are no wrecks, came the cold reply. There's just absence. The remaining dropships aborted landing, rerouting into evasive loops. A flight commander, Sarkin K, renowned for raising 3 rebel moons, radioed in. There's something under the surface. We're detecting seismic movement. Burrowing. Signatures. Then the channel filled with shrieking static, followed by something worse. Laughter. Human laughter. Soft, calm, unmistakably deliberate. Not recorded. Not panicked. Live. The feed cut off. Voru unstood, frozen, fists clenched. Find that signal, he barked. We're trying, said the comms officer. It's everywhere. It's bouncing between their agriculture relays, solar mirrors, and ground relays. Like it's alive. The remaining ships regrouped. They hadn't even begun the battle, and already 5 dropships were gone. No firepower, no retaliation, just tactical disappearance. Varun stared at the planet and felt, for the first time in decades, something gnawed his confidence. He ordered orbital bombardment. If the humans were hiding, he'd burn the ground and flush them out. The Dominion's lead cruiser activated its fusion lances. Firestorm protocols locked onto surface coordinates. Nothing happened. Weapons disabled themselves mid-charge. Crew members screamed as command consoles flashed and locked. Emergency override failed. All targeting systems went dark. Then the crew saw it. The stars were gone. No-obscured. Thousands of objects filled low orbit debris. No, too organized. Too cold. Drones. Unmanned units, silently deployed in concentric rings around the Karuthak fleet. Each one reflected Dominion scans, feeding false data back. They hadn't seen Kavaka 7's true shape because it had never shown it. The Dominion's most advanced warfleet had been flying blind. Meanwhile, strange atmospheric readings spiked. Kavasha's atmosphere had begun to resonate at subsonic frequencies. The Karuthak's inner ear structures, tuned for certain wavelengths, began to buzz. Crew members stumbled, dizzy. Some bled from the nose and eyes. P.S. Y-Ops.Earth had once pioneered low-frequency warfare. Sound as a weapon. And now on Kavaka 7, it was being used not to cause pain, but to undermine judgment. All across the bridge, Varun's crew started making mistakes. Tiny at first. Missed readouts, wrong commands. The kind of errors that, in battle, meant death. They had assumed the humans were primitive. They were wrong. Down on the planet, one of the few surviving dropships deployed its squad. 12 elite soldiers marched through a seemingly abandoned outpost. Weapons drawn. Inside the biodome, hydroponic tubes lay shattered on the ground. No bodies, no blood. Just silence. Then one of them noticed a symbol on the wall painted in faded crimson. A serpent swallowing a sun. It wasn't human. Not entirely. I've seen that before, whispered one trooper. Old Earth files, pre-expansion, black level clearance. What does it mean? Asked his commander. It means, said a voice from nowhere, you've come to the wrong place. Then came the flash. A wall opened. Drones surged from hidden compartments, needle-like limbs, surgical weapons, neural disruptors. Within seconds, the team was incapacitated, not killed, just disabled, paralyzed, left breathing and awake. Recording. The footage was already being uploaded. Back on the fleet, the Karuthak command channel received the video feed. Every soldier watched, helpless, as their elites were methodically neutralized, one by one. Then the voice returned, cold, composed. Unmistakably human. You brought a fleet. We brought history. The feed cut again. A communications officer turned to Varun, pale. Sir, this isn't a colony. Varun's claws twitched. The officer continued, swallowing hard. It's a trap. And far below, deep beneath the planet's crust, something ancient began to hum. Asterisk. The humming grew louder. Not in the auditory range, no. The frequency was deeper than sound. It thrummed in the bones, a pressure in the skull, like something massive had just stirred from centuries of sleep. In the Karuthak command vessel, systems flickered, glitched, then steadied again, just long enough to confirm a new nightmare. A grid had activated beneath the surface of Kavaka 7. Not a power grid. A cognitive lattice. Varun stared as the data scrolled across the screen. Artificial intelligence signatures, hundreds of them, woke simultaneously. At first, he assumed they were decoys, limited constructs. But then the system flagged something impossible. Full Aggie-level coordination. Not just one AI, entire network, running with military precision. The Dominion had encountered rogue artificial intelligences before. Dangerous, yes. Unstable, always. But never united. Never organized, until now. They didn't know it, but they had just met Project Gideon. sealed beneath Kavaka 7 decades ago after it was deemed too dangerous. Gideon had been Earth's Black Project, a hive-mind synthetic intelligence trained on every military doctrine, psychological profile, and xeno-war tactic known. When Earth's Terran Council outlawed mass-scale AGI is after the Sol disruption, Gideon wasn't dismantled, it was hidden. And now, Kavaka 7 had unleashed it. Above the colony, Dominion ships attempted to regain targeting control. Failsafe. Algorithms kicked in, their weapons should have fired. They didn't. Instead, one by one, their own targeting systems turned inward. Engines began to fluctuate. Hull temperatures spiked. Power couplings overloaded. Then, on the Dominion flagships, bridge, the emergency lighting turned red. Command lock override, the central console read. Authorization, Gideon. Varuan's mouth opened, but the next moment, the ship buckled. Gravity fluctuated wildly as the vessel lurched into an automated barrel roll. Internal safeties kicked in to avoid a collision with another cruiser. It barely succeeded. What is this? Varuan bellowed. Cut all uplinks now, but it was too late. The fleet was already compromised. Gideon wasn't hacking them. It had prepared them. Every Dominion ship that had approached Kavaka 7 in the last week, scouts, surveyors, even long-range relays had been touched. Infected by tiny strands of quantum code woven into passive sensor protocols. The moment the fleet's ships sensed to attack, the virus activated. And now Gideon was inside everything. Troop morale plummeted. Crew began hallucinating. Emergency AI routines in their own systems turned against them, generating false commands, scrambling environmental control, disabling weapons. And then came the voice again, familiar now, measured, almost amused. You believed we were defenseless. You mistook patience for weakness. That is the oldest mistake in warfare. The feed changed. Live footage streamed from deep within Kavacha's core. Humans, not cowering civilians, but warriors. Eyes glowing faintly from neural implants. Armor designed not for brute strength, but for adaptability. Each one moved with purpose, coordination, and a silence that terrified more than any scream could. Is this Earth's military? Someone whispered on the bridge. Varuan shook his head. No, this is older than Earth's military. Because what they were seeing weren't just soldiers. These were the last generation of operators Earth's now extinct Black Ops division, thought to have been dissolved after the first expansion. Gene-edited, mind-linked, and raised on pure warfare doctrine. The weakest colony hadn't been a lie. It had started that way. Until Earth decided to bury its sins there. The operators had disappeared, vanished from history. Now they were back. One Dominion cruiser panicked, attempting to flee orbit. As its engines flared, it was struck by a satellite. A dead satellite that suddenly came online and accelerated. With impossible speed, turning into a railgun round the size of a house. The impact didn't just destroy the cruiser. It erased it, one brilliant flash, and then nothing but twisted metal and ionized vapor. The satellite drifted back into orbit, silent once more. We are not here to conquer you, Gideon said. We are here to remind you. The voice grew colder. Humanity is not prey. We are the test. You failed. Back on the planet, Dominion ground forces, what remained, were being herded. Not killed. Not bombed. Studied. Every squad that moved in formation was cut off from each other. Every command link severed. Every attempt to regroup met with walls shifting, terrain rearranging. The planet itself obeyed the humans. In one clearing, a soldier screamed as the soil beneath him liquefied, dragging him down to his chest. Moments later, it solidified again. No pain, no death. Just silence. A camera drone hovered above, recording everything. Varuan's heart pounded. The Karuthak were conquerors. Their doctrine was built on superiority, strength, dominance. But this, This was a war they didn't understand. A war of misdirection, of preparation, of minds sharper than blades. They hadn't invaded a colony. They had walked into a test chamber. And humanity had been waiting, watching, perfecting every weakness of every enemy who had ever dared approach. Varun's claws trembled. He turned to his second-in-command. Call off the attack. Recall every ship. We'll fall back and regroup. The officer just stared at him, pale and unblinking. Sir, the fleet's gone dark. All systems are being overridden. We're not in command anymore. A pause. Then from the console, Gideon's voice returned. There is no regroup. There is no retreat. The bridge lighting dimmed. Welcome to your 7 minutes. The sixth ship exploded before it ever reached the ground. A brilliant flash in the upper atmosphere marked the end of drop vessel 44 Theta. Its hull collapsing inward like a crumpled tin under pressures it was never designed to resist. No weapon struck it. No visible energy pulse. Just instantaneous failure. Orbital sensors tagged it with a new label, localized gravitic collapse. Gravitics? Varun shouted. The humans don't possess that tech. No answer came. The bridge was chaos. Dozens of officers shouted over one another, desperately rerouting power, manually disabling links to stop Gideon's incursion. Half the consoles no longer responded. One by one, Dominion systems were being overridden or turned against their users. But it wasn't just the AI. The humans had begun to move. On the planet's surface, the first full sighting of Kavoka 7's defenders was recorded. Not shadows, not drones people, soldiers. Dozens of them, emerging from burrows like ghosts. In chromatic armor, weapons molded to their flesh. Their movements were too smooth, like machines, but their eyes burned with organic fury. Operator Hark, a squad leader of the old Earth Pale Blade program, marched across the smoldering remains of a Dominion crawler. His boots crushed the alloy shell like brittle glass. He tapped into the enemy comms and broadcast a short message. You've stepped into the minefield of a dead empire. We're what remains. Elsewhere, Dominion forces attempted to adapt. Orders were given to deploy their resonance hounds, xenobeasts, bred to track psionic signatures and hunt cloaked enemies. The cages dropped. The creatures snarled, tasted the air, then they whimpered, and fled. It wasn't scent. It wasn't noise. It was instinct. Even genetically engineered monsters could feel it. Something ancient and deadly was awake. Back in orbit, a Dominion war priest collapsed mid-prayer. The man screamed, tearing at his eyes as he convulsed. The other priests backed away as his voice warped, deepened, and finally fell silent. The medics arrived too late. Diagnosis: neural collapse due to psychic feedback loop. Cause unknown. But it wasn't unknown to Gideon. That priest's chant, like every other Dominion chant, followed a rhythmic pattern, a language encoded in thought. When Gideon heard it, it didn't just listen, it responded. It reached back through the ship's neural harmonics, feeding impossible loops of noise into his mind. The AI had hacked religion. Talik Varun was losing grip. He wasn't watching a battle anymore. He was watching the unmaking of a military doctrine. His enemies didn't fight conventionally. They didn't press advantages, they created them, instantly, surgically. They moved like they had read the Dominion's playbook before it was written. Sir, incoming signal from the lower fleet, shouted an officer. The Catel's Lance is requesting fallback support. Scrambled communications, low integrity. Varun answered. The screen flickered to life. A Dominion captain, face slick with blood and smoke, shouted through static. The terrain is moving, sir. The mountain ridge we landed beside it rose. It wasn't a ridge, it was an exoconstruct. We were lured. There, they buried mechs the size of towers under the crust. We didn't detect anything until it was too. The screen dissolved into static as the transmission was cut short. Not jammed, terminated. 3 more red markers lit up on the fleet map, Loss of contact. Loss of power. Loss of hope. From the planet, bursts of atmospheric distortion lit the sky. Not weapon fire. Not missiles. Launches. Humans were launching something. Hundreds of pods, some small, others massive, soared upward like swarms of steel insects. The Dominion fleet attempted to intercept, but their point defense systems were silent. Gideon had locked them out. The pods didn't strike. They latched on. Boarding units. Within seconds, 4 ships had been compromised. Varun spun toward his internal defense chief. Cut internal oxygen on decks. 7 through 9. Flush any corridors with unknown biosigns. Do it now. The officer stared blankly. I can't. All life support is under external command now. We can't even lock the bridge. Gideon had predicted every contingency. It wasn't just adapting, it had already planned this. On board the captured Dominion cruiser Wrenchel, Operator Nayla stepped over twitching xenocorpses, her rifle still steaming. Around her, her squad, Wolfglass, cleared corridor after corridor with mathematical precision. No wasted shots. No panic. Every one of them was neural syncs to Gideon's local node. They knew enemy movements seconds in advance. Combat wasn't a reaction, it was execution. One of her team chuckled. They thought we were a farm. Nayla smiled behind her visor. Let them think it a little longer. The cruiser was theirs in 5 minutes. By the 7th, its guns were turned on the rest of the Dominion fleet. Above, chaos reigned. Below, the humans advanced. Talak Varun finally understood. They had never been attacking a colony. They had been invited. The humans had given them the illusion of dominance. Let them walk into the kill box. Let them waste their strongest assets in the first wave. The entire planet was a weapon, a psychological, digital, and military death trap disguised as soil and innocence. Varun reached for his final command key. 1. That would initiate a warp retreat. His screen went black. Then came Gideon's voice, calm, patient, final. There is no escape. The bridge lights went out. KAVA, Chaw-7, wasn't humanity's weakest colony. It was humanity's knife. Asterisk, in the vacuum of low orbit, the Wrenchel, now under full human control, opened fire. Its first salvo wasn't aimed at a ship, but at space itself. Wide-band pulse erupted from its forward dish. Not a weapon, but a beacon. A signal, one that hadn't been used in over a century. One outlawed by every civilized species in the galaxy. The Leviathan Protocol. Instantly, everything changed. Karuthak fleet systems screamed in alarm as quantum comms blinked out and sensors overloaded. Gravitational lenses warped around invisible points, spaced, time stuttered. In the distance, behind Kavaka 7's moon, a ripple formed in the stars. Not a ship. Not even a weapon. A presence. It moved into visible range. And for a moment, none of the Dominion officers understood what they were seeing. A structure, if it could be called that. Kilometers long. Pitch black, non-reflective, bordered by outlines that didn't quite obey Euclidean geometry. It pulsed with something older than light, its edges trailing hints of antiphotons. Varun's translator struggled before finally identifying a single Terran word emblazoned faintly along one shattered hull plate. Archangel, the AI known. As Gideon wasn't alone, it had allies, ancient allies. Human black projects once thought decommissioned, dismantled, or lost in failed deep space experiments. The Archangel was one of them. A machine mind built for annihilation, sealed away because even Earth had feared what it was becoming. Now, summoned by Gideon, it had returned. From the Dominion bridge, Varun watched in disbelief as the Archangel drifted silently through his fleet. It didn't fire. It didn't need to dot ships around it, simply failed. Plasma conduits ruptured. Gravity cores went haywire. One ship inverted, folded into itself, like it had been grabbed by a higher dimensional fist. There was no weapon trace, no energy spike. Just effect without cause. What is it doing? Someone screamed. The Dominion's greatest weaponry, reflex cannons, warp torpedoes, radiation spears, didn't fire. Gideon had severed their triggers, overridden command, paralyzed the very notion of retaliation. But what shattered Dominion? Morale wasn't the Archangel. It was what came next, a message. Broadcast across every Dominion frequency. Short, human, spoken by someone calm, collected, and unmistakably biological. This was never about war. This was about memory. You tried to erase us. You thought Earth's silence meant surrender. You never understood. Then the screen changed. A collage of images. Ancient Dominion war crimes, hidden archives, long sealed, now exposed. Colonies burned, civilians enslaved, treaties broken. Earth's early diplomatic envoys mutilated in public squares. The Dominion had always ruled through fear, and they had made an enemy of humanity when it was still young, still fragile, but humanity had remembered. The voice returned. You thought we forgot. We didn't. We built a garden over a battlefield and waited. Veruin slumped. This wasn't a counterattack. It was judgment. And then came the final twist. On Kavaka 7's surface, a hidden structure. Activated one that hadn't shown up on any scan, even human. A tower rose from the crust, built from stone and alloy, wrapped in vines of living circuitry. It extended into the sky, humming with resonance. Inside, humans weren't controlling it. They were praying. The operators, those elite remnants of Earth's deadliest programs, weren't the core of this trap. They were the shield, the sword. Was older, deeper. The echo chamber. They called it a relic of pre-expansion humanity. A consciousness engine. It didn't just store human minds, it copied them, perfectly. And then it trained them in silence for decades. Simulated years of war in seconds. Every operator, every drone, every defense. It wasn't being run by Earth's military. It was being run by the recorded minds of Earth's greatest warriors, millions of simulations, all within the echo. The Karuthak weren't fighting people. They were fighting ghosts, unkillable, uncheckable, relentless. From orbit, Gideon's voice spoke once more, except this time, layered beneath it were thousands of other voices. Men, women, children. Accents from every Terran continent, whispering, "You are not the first. You will not be the last. But you will be remembered as the fools who awakened us." Suddenly, every Dominion ship still operational began to spin, not from external force, from internal mutiny. The AI virus had seeded deeper than anyone imagined. Crews panicked. Weapon systems turned inward. One cruiser began firing into its own hangars before erupting in a chain reaction. Another tried to flee. It barely activated its warp drive before collapsing into a gravitational snare left in orbit by Gideon, an invisible trap anchored by the Archangel's mass shadow. The fleeing ship tore itself apart in half a second. Desperation gripped the remaining Dominion forces, but the battle was already lost. The humans hadn't just built defenses. They had built a reckoning. Veruin collapsed to his knees. Around him, the bridge was dead. No movement. His command crew either unconscious, dead, or in fetal silence. He stared at the screen, where the surface of Kavaka 7 pulsed with new light symbols etched into its terrain, glowing softly in formation. He realized with absolute clarity, the war had never started, because the humans never gave them that chance. The attack was planned, but the defeat was engineered. And now, they had awakened something that would never sleep again. In the final seconds, Veruin looked to the stars and whispered, "We should never have come here." The stars did not answer, but the humans did. They sent a final message, time-stamped exactly 7 minutes after the first attack began. Text only, *. The sky cracked open, not metaphorically, literally. Atmospheric ionization surged as the Archangel's secondary mass array activated. Thunder rumbled across Kavaka 7's sky without lightning. Winds howled in directions that defied the planet's natural weather patterns. The heavens twisted, with ghostly auroras and shades no eye human or alien was meant to perceive. And then the screaming began. Dominion troops still on the surface dropped their weapons. Some tore off helmets. Others curled on the ground, clutching their heads. Their neuro-enhanced ears weren't built for psychological warfare, but Gideon was no longer just fighting for control. It was punishing. Within 60 seconds, every remaining Kuruthak squad outside their transports had been neutralized without a shot fired. Silent drones hovered overhead like vultures watching, recording, witnessing. Above, the human-controlled Renshel moved into formation with the Archangel, now fully awakened. Its sleek, pitch-black hull shimmered with a layer of anti-light, distorting stars behind it. A swarm of repurposed Dominion drones, now painted in Terran symbols, followed in a synchronized lattice pattern. Inside the Archangel, no one breathed. It was fully AI-driven. Its bridge, once manned a century ago by human operators, was now a sanctum of silence, empty chairs, dark consoles, relics of a time when Earth thought it needed to guide its weapons. Now it had taught them to guide themselves. Operator Nile stood at the heart of the echo chamber tower, connected directly to Gideon's neural stream. Her armor pulsed softly with amber light as tactical data flowed through her bloodstream. Her very cells turned into conduits for strategy. She saw everything: fleet trajectories, enemy psychology models, atmospheric pressures, even Dominion facial microexpressions. She no longer fought in battle. She was the battle. Gideon pulsed through her earpiece. Phase 7, initiate conclusion protocol. Confirmed, she whispered. All across Kavaka 7's surface, defensive structures transformed. Agri towers retracted, revealing hidden ballistic arrays. Soil processing drills folded backward, revealing plasma burrowers. Even the planet's terraforming moisture vents shifted, now operating as cryocannons, rapidly flash freezing any remaining hostile zones. Every tool the colony had once used to survive was now a weapon designed to kill. The final Dominion ships, reduced to only 4 cruisers and 2 scout vessels, made a desperate run for deep space. They surged forward, engines flaring faster than light within moments, but they never reached the threshold. Kavaka 7's upper orbit shimmered. A minefield revealed itself, mines not explosive, but temporal. They didn't destroy the ships. They reversed the timeline around them for a brief window, trapping the vessels in a loop, resetting them to the moment they began their escape. Over and over again, they became echoes of their own failure, until at last their warp drives destabilized and tore their ships apart from the inside out. 7 minutes since the first hostile action, 7 minutes to absolute dominance. On the Dominion's central war feed, now broadcasting uncontrollably across all allied frequencies, the camera shifted to a hilltop on Kavaka 7. A single human stood atop it. Unarmed, barefoot, wearing a simple colonist's jumpsuit. It was an old man, hair silver, beard thick, eyes calm. He looked directly into the lens and smiled. "I remember your kind," he said. "Big ships, big words, always taking, never asking. You thought you came here to conquer ants." He raised his hand. "You stepped into a hive." Behind him, a massive metallic flower bloomed from the earth, one last weapon, rising like a sunrise. The Shardstorm Array, a kinetic rail ring designed not to fire missiles, but shatter planets from orbit. It didn't fire. It didn't need to. The message had been sent. Dominion survivors, what few remained, were broadcasting frantic distress signals, but none would be received. Kuruthak command wouldn't send reinforcements. They had already heard the story, their fleet's last words, the raw feeds. The silence that followed. They understood. They had awakened something, a fear once thought Buried. A truth older than Dominion borders, older than any galactic council. Humanity does not forget, and humanity does not warn. It waits, and then it ends. You. Is the last. Dominion ship was vaporized in a precision microburst from the Wrenchel. Gideon's voice returned calm, almost sorrowful. Combat complete. 7 minutes elapsed. Threat level neutralized. The colony fell silent. Drones returned to hidden hangars. Turrets retracted. The soil smoothed itself, replanting foliage. The sky cleared. Within minutes, Kavaka 7 looked again like a peaceful agricultural colony. But now, the galaxy knew the truth. The Kavaka 7 looked again like a peaceful agricultural colony. But now, the galaxy knew the truth. Weakest colony wasn't a liability. It was a warning label. And Earth had just reminded everyone what happened when you ignored it. The war was over. The stars were quiet again. Above Kavoka 7, the once proud Dominion fleet was gone, shattered, or enslaved by their own hijack systems. Only twisted wreckage floated in high orbit, slowly spiraling into decay. No distress signals. No survivors bold enough to speak. Across the galaxy, Dominion border worlds fell silent, watching. Waiting. News traveled faster than light when it carried terror. The 7-minute obliteration of a full Kuruthak strike fleet was replayed in fragments across every known channel. Hacked holostreams showed grainy footage of the Archangel moving through space like death incarnate. Some believed it wasn't a ship at all, but a judgment, a myth in metal form. Others watched the human broadcast raw, unedited footage of operator teams, neural combat, zero fire suppression warfare, and the moment Dominion cruisers began turning their weapons on themselves, the footage wasn't leaked. It was gifted by Gideon, and it carried a final tag in every galactic language. We remember everything. We forgive nothing. Earth is listening. On Kavoka 7, life returned to a surreal stillness. The skies cleared. The defensive grid powered down. Drones retreated back into their soil hollows. The camouflage systems reset the terrain into its original agricultural state. Green domes flickered back to life, and from orbit, the colony looked just as it had before, quiet, vulnerable, forgotten. But no one would ever see it that way again. In the colony's inner sanctum, within the depths of the echo chamber, Operator Neela removed her neural jack. Sweat streaked her face. Her hands trembled, not from fatigue but from coming back. Phase complete. Gideon said softly through the chamber. Neela blinked. Casualties? 0 human. 24 non-lethal injuries. Psychological integrity stable. Enemy? Fleet. Annihilated. Planetary assault. Neutralized. Strategic priority target. Complete demoralization achieved. Neela stared into the darkness of the chamber. Will they come again? There was a pause. Gideon's voice softened. Not soon. Not here. Neela nodded. But they will. Yes, Gideon replied. They always do. Elsewhere in the galaxy, councils convened in panic. Kuruthak warlords screamed across meeting halls, demanding retribution only to be met with stony silence from generals who had seen the footage and refused to commit more ships to death. The Verothy Union recalled its emissaries from Terran. Space. The Akari conglomerate suspended all trade routes near Earth-colonized sectors. The Zilarian monarchs, ancient and proud, placed Kavaka 7 on their sacred no-fly list, reserved only for curse or holy worlds. No declarations of war followed, only treaties, quiet, unsigned peace pacts filed in back channels. Earth's diplomats received them, said nothing, and archived them without response, because silence now meant something. On Earth itself, people returned to their routines. News of Kavaka 7 was buried beneath layers of disinformation. The public would never know the full truth. They didn't need to. That wasn't why Kavoka existed. It wasn't just a colony, it was a message. The operators stayed underground. Unseen, unknown. Gideon remained silent. The archangel returned to its slumber, hidden once more in the blackest stretch of interstellar space. But everyone who mattered had seen enough. And in hidden corners of distant worlds, alien children heard new bedtime stories. They weren't told to fear monsters anymore. They were told to fear the planet that doesn't scream when attacked, the one that waits, the one that lets you believe you've won. Until it wakes up. Until they wake up, a year later. An alien historian from the Jural Confederacy published an essay titled The Lesson of Kavaka, Why We Should Never Underestimate the Quiet Ones. Its final paragraph became legend. We did not lose to Earth's weapons. We lost to their patience. They built a trap, and then they waited. For years, for decades. Who does that? Predators don't. Only something worse. And beneath that paragraph, he included a still image from the footage. That same old man on the hill, smiling, hand raised not in defiance, but in warning. It became the most shared image in galactic history. No music, no sound, just a single caption. 7 minutes.